Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to the Sunday recap, my weekly vlog where I talk a little bit about my last week in games. And last week was dominated by EVE Online, although there is some stuff in other games that I do look forward to and is on the horizon. Last week I really just played EVE Online, mostly trying to wrap my head around all of the changes that are happening to the game. That's pretty interesting. It is now a constant flow of change and adaptation that we do need to do in EVE Online to try and keep up with everything that CCP is doing. It's a completely different experience. So I did spend a decent amount of time just exploring around, actually trying to do exploration in different ships, because to my surprise I'm all of a sudden getting quite a few comments for people asking me to revisit ships, especially different options from what I usually fly, which is shields, missiles, drones. That combination is, I think, very easy, very strong. You've got the passive shields, which I mean, just you know very quickly if your tank is gonna hold or not, if you get a run or not. Then missiles, very consistent damage at almost any range, and then drones is the versatility of that meta, where you can have small drones for the small targets, medium drones for bigger targets. So you have all of these options rolled into one package. The Gila is of course you know, the poster boy of it, but there's definitely other things in the Caldari ship line that will work that way as well. Amar has a few options as well, although you'd rather go armor tank for those, but it is just very strong. And I think it's because the summer is ending that we have quite a few players come back from their breaks, and they're actually asking for different options, which I think is pretty cool. One request, for instance, is for the Phantasm. I was looking for my Exploration Phantasm, but I must have sold it. I also think that in the previous version I made a bit of a mistake where I was using pulse lasers, which of course against Sancha is not so great. So it's something, for instance, that I do plan to do at some point as well. Get back into some different ships with different weapon systems and try to make those work in exploration, and there seems to be some demand for that as well. Another part of EVE Online, of course, is the daily routine, blueprint copies, PI. That is something that I take a look at every day, although my BPCs are basically lapsing the week this week, because it's 7 days and like a number of hours, so I usually reset my jobs every 8 days, and so this week that's on Sunday, that's actually on the day of recording, and so the run to Jita in order to sell them will lapse 1 week because of that. But yeah, that's not a bad thing. Sometimes, you know, give yourself a little bit more time so that all your contracts are filled, and then you can basically hope for higher prices. So don't become too predictable in the market either. Switching it up has its advantages. PI is still struggling, although we're seeing some signs of increased demand. I mostly focus on fuel related PI materials, and those are still very, very bad. So that's just more you know, keeping everything, stashing it in one of the trade hubs, and then waiting for better times to sell. And then the final bit of my activity in EVE Online, as I said, has actually been taking a look at all the changes that have been happening and the impact, especially around Dital, where I mostly live at the moment. And so last week I took a look at the Amar Trade Hub, even made a video about it, because we are starting to see some changes there. I find them very fascinating. Some people were expecting Amar to basically completely die out because of the fall of Nyarja and it now being so far away from Jita, but we're actually in some of the more bulky items seeing increased volumes since the fall of Nyarja. That was very noticeable. Prices, in my opinion, for industrialists felt very competitive compared to Jita. So I do think that there is basically a large part of the local population that is now just basically moving to Amar rather than to Jita, and so it's going to be interesting to see how all of that interacts. I also did fly to Rennes for a moment, but I didn't really spot anything there just yet. That's perhaps something for the longer term. How will those smaller trade hubs, you know, Jita is by far the largest, but the second one then is Amar. After that is Dodixie, and then you get Rennes and Hek, Minmatar space, the least popular space as far as I can tell. How will those evolve? That can be of interest, but I basically think it's too soon to see what the impact will be there. So I keep an eye on all of that stuff. I do want to basically you know, find the right right place to then start to do my business and things like that if I can't fly my stuff to Jita. But so far it's looking like it's Amar, but who knows how all of that will evolve, of course. I find it really interesting. You now basically have Amar that has been pushed back way away from Jita, but the local activity there is actually quite sizable, specifically in mining, which might give it actually an edge for industrialists as well. And it's going to be interesting to see how all of that evolves in the next monthly economics reports from CCP. So that's something that I'm doing as well. Of course, we also have the structure changes. I actually got some reports from viewers and players in game that there's like whole systems that are being abandoned by groups because of the new core. So you know, quite a bit of speculation went into advanced PI materials, expecting a big boom in destruction and thus in demand. But it also does look like it's just stepped up the threshold, the cost and the risk of actually deploying a structure and then also maintaining structures that quite a few corporations are not necessarily abandoning, but I think downscaling their operations quite substantially. I'm making my plans to keep everything up and running. I want all those services up and running in Dital, so that should be okay. But it's true that it's far more risky, far more costly all of a sudden, and so we're actually seeing a response in structures being abandoned all of a sudden, which is kind of interesting as well. That's all part of the sandboxy nature of EVE Online, of course. And well, I'll quickly mention it, but there is some stuff on the horizon that I'm planning to do as well. Next week we should see the start of the new league in Path of Exile. It's called Heist, if I'm not mistaken. There's definitely a couple of interesting new abilities and changed abilities there, so we'll take a look at that. I'm not sure how much I'll commit, because later down the line we also have Shadowlands that's still coming. I think late November was the date, the launch date for the new expansion. And of course, in World of Warcraft you get this pre-patch period as well, where basically Blizzard, not CCP, Blizzard in WoW is giving out lots of stuff, and there's new stuff to explore as well, because if I'm not mistaken they'll have the levels already, they'll put in the new abilities, so I may take a look at that. I'm still not sure of it, but for the expansion I am definitely going to revisit World of Warcraft as well. My first MMO, my first foray into MMOs was World of Warcraft, and it's basically been the gateway to the sandbox of EVE Online, so I do still keep an eye on it. And you know, some of those cinematics and things like that are really cool, so that's going to be on the radar next as well. And that was my last week in games, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.